So what does God want from me? What does he want from you? What does he want from all of us? You know who asked this question? Moses himself, Moshe Rabbeinu. In Deuteronomy, on his final address to the Jewish people before his, passing, after the 40 years of being in the desert, and they're being readied to be led by Joshua, Yeshua, into the Canaan. So the verse says, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mi'imach. Moses says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, what does God, Hashem, your God, want from you? Rak liyira, I say, only to fear him. And as we have learned, the concept of fear doesn't mean fear of punishment. It doesn't mean anything but a simple idea of the presence of God. That God is present and real. And because God is present, just like a human being, when they're present in the room, we act differently. That's called fear. Fear of the presence of the individual, so we act differently. We do that instinctually, right? Very simple. Your feet might be on the table right now, but if someone were to walk into the room, you might actually take your feet off the table, right? Because someone's looking. Not because they're even making a judgment, not because they're giving us a dirty eye, or that eye, but just because someone's looking, period. So that is what God is asking. That's all he's asking. So the Talmud, our sages in the Talmud take that verse and ask a question. That's so simple. Like, that's all he's asking? From me, from you, from all of us? Like, that's it? I mean, that's it, not an only that's it, but like, really? That's so easy and simple? So the Talmud answers, yes, for Moses, for Moshe, it's simple. Now the Alter Rebbe picks up on the teachings from the Talmud and says, wait, what's going on over here? Moses is talking to the Jewish people, and he's now inspiring them to take the proper path as they will go into the land of Israel. And he's empowering them with this. He's speaking to the Jewish people. Talmud, when it's asking the question, well, is that so simple? Is that so easy? Such a small thing? Is it really so small? Sounds like a big thing. So the answer is, yeah, for Moses, for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a small thing. But the question is not about Moshe Rabbeinu. It's about you. It's about me. For me and you, it might not be such a small thing. So, hey, you're not giving the proper response. Now the Rebbe says, ooh, this is telling us something very important. And that is that every single soul of the Jewish people, they comprise within it the quality of the soul of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, how do we understand that? Well, Moshe Rabbeinu is one of the 7 shepherds of the Jewish people. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're also shepherds. Yosef, Aaron, David, King David. And here we have Moshe Rabbeinu is the general shepherd. He's called the shepherd of shepherds. What does a shepherd do? Provides for the sheep. Feeds the sheep. Gives them vitality. Gives them life. To sustain them. And as the Alter Rebbe says over here, life. What kind of life? Of an awareness. Being cognizant of God. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu does. that godliness should be self-evident and experienced by each and every one of us. According to our capacity, we're not all the same, but this is what the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu in each and every one of us, that he is the embodiment himself of Das Elyon, as it's called, supernal knowledge, of supernal knowledge in the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, of godliness. The God he is, the knowledge, the known, and the knower are all one and the same. In other words, God's knowledge is one with God, as opposed to what I know is a part of me, but it's not perfectly one with me. But with God, it's perfectly one. And that is the embodiment of Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, faithful shepherd, who feeds us the knowledge, the awareness, the cognizance of God and godliness, that it should be self-evident in our own lives. That's what we get. That should be internalized. In other words, on my own, I would not be able to achieve that so simply without touching that part inside of me, that there is the Moshe Rabbeinu that gives that power, the empowerment. That if God is real, and he's giving vitality, he's giving godliness to me and to the world around me, when I summon up that part of me, that's called the fear of God. In addition, continues the Alter Rebbe in chapter 42, this is the beginning of chapter 42, that in every generation there's a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's the extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation in the great holy people as the Rebbe. And therefore, they are the eyes of the congregation. They embody the ultimate first faithful shepherd, Moshe Rabbeinu. They're the continuation of him, being that spark. And therefore, they impart the knowledge to the people that they can know the greatness of God and to serve God with all heart and with all your soul. The service of the heart means taking that which you know and are aware of in your mind and take it into das, into knowledge, to connect it, then it becomes real for you. Now, this will be ultimately fulfilled in the Messianic era, because then we won't even need a teacher to teach me to know God, because we'll all know God, all of us. However, now, today, we need that teacher. We need the Rebbe to impart for us the knowledge of God, God's greatness, so that way I could be aware of it. So we need the Alter Rebbe and Tanya to teach us this, to be that Moses, that faithful shepherd, who's teaching us the awareness of God and godliness in us, in the world around us. And that knowledge is not merely just to, again, to have it just intellectual, but it should affect us. And change us in our behavior. So this is not just knowing something from a book, but this is true teachers who are beyond the book, right? And when we can meditate upon this and think about this, deeply ponder it, until our thoughts are bound up with the realness of God. So real that when we can ponder on such a simple thing, but it becomes more real than the material world that we see and perceive with our eyes. Because that's the idea of das. Right? We have Chachma, Bina, V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. We translate it as knowledge. Knowledge means here to connect. Das means to connect. As in the verse that says, Adam Yadaz Chava, Adam knew Eve. It means they had relationships, a relationship, a union. In that union, they really connect. So likewise, in the knowledge, in the awareness, the cognizance of God in our lives, in the world around us, when we really connect with that, how? By pondering it, meditating upon that truth about God's realness, His greatness, then that's going to produce something. A very powerful idea here. Firstly, for me, this is the one chapter that brings out the necessity of having a Rebbe in your life. Well, we have the Alter Rebbe because we learned Tanya. Also, we have our dear Rebbe, who still teaches us, even after Gimel Tammuz and his physical passing from this world. He's still the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Moses of our generation, the faithful shepherd who feeds us. Feeds us. What does he feed us? The greatest thing you could be fed? An awareness of God, godliness in your life, in the world around you, and the truth of it. So much so that we could gain from the Moses of our generation that we become so real for us, more real than the material world, more real than lunch, more real than other needs that we seem to have. But of course, that truth will become very self-evident even without a teacher in the Messianic times, but not today. I just want to point out a couple of interesting points here. That being that the Moses of a generation is an extension of the Moses of the original Moses, and that spark is found of Moses and Moshe Rabbeinu in the Moses of our generation. That's why Chassidim always would like to gaze at the Rebbe, because when you gaze at the Rebbe, you're gazing at the spark of Moses that's in him, that's enclosed within him. Interesting and important point. Another, it says here, so that Moses causes vitality and godliness to flow to the souls of Israel. So the Alter Rebbe spent weeks. Should he write causes vitality of godliness or vitality and godliness? He spent several weeks pondering how to say that. The point I want to bring out is that whether he puts the word and or, not and or makes it into two separate ideas: vitality and godliness, or is it vitality of godliness? Is so precise, the wording, that he spent weeks pondering this. Every word of Tanya is what we call Lishena Hazov, his golden tongue. Every word is so precise and exacting. Just another thought to bring out.